What is going on, my Concise Conversation family? I hope you guys are all doing well today on this fine June 24th, Friday. I'm doing well, chilling, starting my day. Yeah, I'm good. So, little update. I'm actually switching today's episode for day 5, which is relationships. So I'm going to be talking about relationships today. It's a little spicy. I wasn't prepared for it, but here we go. Because one of my guests, it just made it easier for one of my guests. So here we go. But yeah, today I want to talk about relationships and specifically how they function, or how I've seen them function in the LGBTQ community, in my own personal experiences, and just overall relationship advice, and making sure that you know your intentions before getting into any relationship. So, continuing with the story. Kind of like skipping a little bit, but hey, you guys will see all the videos at the end. But my relationship experience, oh my god, it is so traumatic. But here we go. I got into a relationship with a 30-year-old man, and I feel like I've always been attracted to older people, whatever that means, because I feel like I'm a very mature person, which is another mistake. Do not conflate maturity with age, because those are two exclusively different things. Just because you're older does not necessarily mean that you're more mature, you know. But I feel like I've always been a more mature person in my life, so I feel like I tended to date and just engage with older people. And for me, I've only had one relationship, and yeah, that was the only relationship I had, and that was the beginning of 2020. So prior to that, I had never been in a relationship, and I had really never even seen gay relationships, which is another big thing. I feel like when you don't have that representation to see how gay relationships, or how relationships that you might engage with, play out, it's very hard when you have to go out and kind of create your own roadmap in, being in a relationship. But that's what a lot of gay people have to do, so that's what I did as well. So, prior to being in a relationship, I was just really hooking up with people, and that was really as far as it went. Like, maybe friends with benefits, and continuing on like that, but nothing serious. But with this guy, we didn't have sex right away. So in my head, I figured that, oh, well, that is an indicator that this could be something more. And I think my advice would be just to really be aware of your feelings, especially when you're engaging within your very first relationship, because that's why it's called the honeymoon phase. Like, there's a lot of things in the beginning of the relationship that you overlook in order to try to make the relationship, which is, make the fantasy of your relationship into reality. But by overlooking those things, you're overlooking reality. And by overlooking reality, then you put yourself in a bad place. And that's what happened to me. So, because I kind of overlooked a lot of things, I believe, and maybe he did as well, but he was older, so I don't know, and he's been in multiple relationships. So this was my first relationship. I feel like I overlooked a lot of things, and it definitely came back to bite me in the end. One thing I feel like I messed up on being in this relationship is not being present and looking too far in the future. And I think that's a big theme for a lot of people, especially people who are intense lovers, and I feel like I am a very intense lover. If you're into astrology, I have a Venus Scorpio. If you know, you know. But that just really indicates that me and like people with that placement, and also just a lot of people in general are just very intense lovers. Like, you meet someone for the first time and you're already planning your wedding and all that jazz. So I think one thing that I would say is to make sure that you are friends with this person before you move into a relationship, because a lot of people skip that part, and I think that is a strong foundation in being in a relationship that you cannot overlook. You definitely cannot. And for me, I feel like the one thing that I had to realize when I was in my relationship is that I think closer to the end of the relationship, I was acting out of loyalty rather than love. And I think for me, it originated from a lot of different areas. Number one, my ex was HIV positive, which is a very traumatic thing that can happen to someone, and I think it's something that's not really talked about in the gay community as much as it should be. I know that there's more conversation about being on PrEP and things of that nature, which will help stop the chances of you contracting HIV. But regardless of the medicine and the technological advances that we've made, being diagnosed with HIV is a very serious diagnosis, and it can affect you mentally, obviously physically, emotionally, in a lot of different ways. And because he had not even been a year into his diagnosis when we got into this relationship, I believe that there was a lot of trauma that he didn't process. And I think that's one thing too. Another tip that I would give is I wouldn't make this a whole point, but I would definitely say try to recognize the trauma and people that you are trying to be in relationships with. I'm not saying that trauma is the biggest hurdle to get over, especially if two people are dedicated and motivated to make the relationship work. But I will say that not recognizing trauma in another person can allow that trauma to spill over to you, where now you're dealing with things that you don't even know where it came from, and it came from a relationship, So I would say really recognize and really take the time to listen to what other people are telling you, because that's another thing that I feel like I overlooked in my relationship, where and not to put anyone on blast, I'm sure it was a learning experience for both of us, but I vividly remember him saying something like along the lines of, I only get into relationship with people who I can get something out of. And for me, I don't know why I didn't register that would also include me, but it didn't, And I think that's another thing that happens with the honeymoon phase, that you kind of overlook a lot of things that would be apparent if you took a step back and you weren't, so into the relationship. But sometimes you have to burn your hand on the stove before learning. When you're not able to recognize whether you're acting out of love or loyalty, I feel like the lines of the relationship can get very blurred. So in my head, the way that I break it down is, when I notice I'm acting out of loyalty, this is how it looks like, or this is what it sounds like. You're with this person because you believe that they need you. You think that if you leave this person, they might not be able to function, or they might have a breakdown, or they don't have another support system outside of you. And that puts the responsibility on you to be there for them as a caretaker rather than as an equal partner. And I feel like when you're acting out of love, it's more apparent in the ways that you and this other person are on an equal standing, and there's no power dynamic, where you guys can both grow together in unison. And I feel like the thing that I didn't notice is, when you're acting out of loyalty, you're giving more than you're receiving, and that disrupts the equilibrium of the relationship, And another thing that I have realized in terms of relationships, and this kind of ties into my spirituality as well, is that I'm a big believer in, I've done research about chakras and different things like that. And the first chakra is called the root chakra, and it's based around survival, basic needs, and basic instincts. And I feel like when people are at that level, really all they can focus about is surviving and how they're going to move on and get to the next day. And I think now that I'm reflecting on my relationship, I believe that my ex was at that point, at that point of just saying, how am I going to get through today? And that's totally understandable, because, he had been going through this diagnosis, and he had a lot of other things going on in his life which contributed to him being at that point. Me, on the other hand, I don't believe I was there. But when two people try to engage in a relationship and they're at different levels of the spectrum, I feel as if the lower person will drag you down. And again, this isn't to bash anyone or to, put fault on anyone for the relationship ending. But I do think both parties need to be self-aware at what stage they're at and realize that trauma can be passed on. The phrase hurt people is very true. And going off of that, I think once you do realize that you are acting out of a place of loyalty rather than love, I think the hardest part is communicating that. At least that was the hardest part for me. And I feel like as a very giving and empathetic person, it's very hard to see someone in need and not want to be there for them. But at the end of the day, their necessities cannot trump yours. Their needs and their wants cannot have a higher value than your basic needs and your basic wants as well. So I think what I would tell relationship me was trust your intuition, because at the end of the day your intuition is never steering you in the wrong place. And I think my intuition was telling me that I didn't need to be in this relationship, or that this relationship was doing more harm than it was good, but because of that strong loyalty I didn't listen to it, and that put me in an even darker place than maybe getting out earlier. So I say my biggest advice is to communicate your feelings exactly at the time that you feel them, because when you allow things to build up and you allow things to fester, at the end there's going to be a bigger explosion than if you would have let it out incrementally. And I think with that, moving on, the breaking up / moving on phase is tough. And for me, I don't think it was even in the fact that I missed him per se, which kind of sucks to say, but I feel like it was in the fact that I missed the person who I was before the relationship. And I think that is what put me in such a dark and depressed place, being so fixated on the past and being so fixated on who I was before the relationship, that I wasn't allowing myself to grow through the relationship and blossom into an even more self-aware and better person. And I think you do need that time after a relationship to sulk and to sometimes be in a sad place so you can reflect and move on. But I think the danger is staying in that place for too long. And when you're not self-aware enough to realize that you're in that place for too long, it spirals and it keeps building and keeps building. So I would say my biggest advice, again, to my past self would be go through those emotions, feel those emotions, but don't sit in them for too long. And by that, I think be intentional about why you're feeling the way that you're feeling, because obviously emotions, you can't always control your emotions, but you can control the way that you see your emotions. And that's why I'm a big advocate for sometimes logic over emotions, because I try and see my emotions from a logical standpoint and say, why am I feeling this way? What are the reasons that led me to feel this way? And how can I grow through this experience? And I think when you kind of switch the mindset to that mindset, it allows you to say everything happens for a reason. And I think for me, that is a big saying that has got me through that experience, that if I hadn't gone through that relationship, I would not be at the self-aware, knowledgeable person who I am today, and I would not be able to share this information with you all. So with that being said, I see everything happening for a reason and everything having a purpose. And I think relationships are maybe one of the biggest things in life that help you grow and help you learn and help you change yourself into the person that you want to be. So I think now that I am past the point of holding resentment and past the point of holding hurt for this past relationship, and trust me, it took like a year. It took like 9 months, 10 months for me to fully process what happened and fully process why I was feeling the way I was feeling. Because after this relationship, I went into a depressive episode. And that is something that at the time I attributed to this person. And I think that is dangerous in the fact that you don't own your emotions and you don't own the way you're feeling, and you use a scapegoat to kind of numb the feelings that you're feeling. And I think when you do that, then all your energy goes toward resenting that person or resenting yourself for being with that person. But again, if you switch the mindset to, I didn't know, I was unaware, I went into a relationship with all the intention of love and support and care, and I didn't quite get the outcome that I wanted, but here's what I learned. I think that formula is so much more healthier than the other one. So that's my advice to you, to look at everything as a learning process and look at things in your life happening for you and not to you. And I think once you go through the stages of grief within the ending of your relationship, you will see that it happened for a reason, and you blossomed into a person that can now be more fit for your next relationship. So I hope you guys also found some value in this video. So this was technically day 5, but I'm switching it to day 7. So there's going to be that little switch. But I hope you guys like this video, and I will see you on the next one. Have a good day.